Hey everybody, this is Dan Collins of the CUNY Kingsborough Math and Computing Department. And in this video today, I would like to show you how to get a test into Blackboard via an alternative mechanism, namely using the Pearson TestGen application, making a test in there, and then importing it into the Blackboard system. Now, if you saw my last video on creating a test in Blackboard, and obviously Blackboard has the facility for that I showed you last time. I do think that's a little bit of a complicated system. That is the longest video that I've had to make to date. And as I said in that video, I don't actually use that system because I do find the web interface to be a little bit burdensome. So in this video, I'm going to show you what I actually do. And many of us actually already make our tests using Pearson TestGen. So I'll have a brief little introduction of what that looks like if that's new to you. And so most of us use Pearson TestGen just to make paper tests that we print out and give to students in class. I have personally used, so you do have to get this new application in your toolkit. I've personally used Pearson TestGen for about 15 years at this point to make my tests. And I have been using it to import tests into Blackboard for about half of that time. And I've been pretty darn happy with it, and it's the best thing that I've found to date. So let me switch over to Pearson TestGen to get started with. That's what this looks like here. This is a thing that you do have to get from the Pearson company that makes many of our textbooks. If you already know about this, maybe fast forward about 5 minutes to the point where I'm going to show maybe the new thing, namely exporting from here into Blackboard. But if it is new to you, just give me a couple minutes here. The video is not about selling you on Pearson TestGen, but I'll just give you a couple minutes so you understand why some of us already use this. You get this from the Pearson company, and officially you're supposed to get an account from the Pearson representative for your school. And then once you have that, you can log on to the Pearson website, search for the textbook that you're using or that you desire to use, and then there'll be a bunch of instructor resources like slideshows and solution sets for the whole book, and this application, and also test banks so Pearson has, I think, prepared test banks for most of their freshman to sophomore level textbooks. Not every single one of them, but the most of them, which is pretty nice. So you can get one of those text banks and then just plug it in here to TestGen, and you'll have a nice library of questions that you can just pick from and not have to write every single question custom made to get started with. So you can see over here on the left, I have a number of test banks that I've already downloaded from Pearson. I'll say this, earlier today I reached out to our Pearson representative at Kingsborough and asked if it was acceptable to share those kinds of materials, TestGen or slideshows or test banks, between faculty of the same department, and the word that I got back was yes on that. So either reach out to your Pearson rep for an account to get that stuff, or reach out to another faculty member in your department that you know has access to this material. Maybe that's a faster way of doing it. So here's all the stuff that I've compiled over the years of using TestGen. I'm going to start making a what should be a paper test here. So I'll just click paper test is fine under create new, blank test there. Let's pretend that I'm teaching one of our Elements of Statistics courses at Kingsborough. For that course, we do officially use the Weiss Introductory Statistics book. So over on the test bank library, that's the third thing down. I'm going to open that up. Let's say I'm working in chapter 3 on descriptive measures, and I'm making a test, and the first couple of questions are about measures of center. For example, the mean. So you can see here, under just the topic of calculating a mean, the test bank has 10 different types of questions here. This is kind of nice. So I'm going to scan these, and I'm going to say, you know what, I like this first one, would do perfectly fine. So I'll click on this, I'll drag it over to the exam, drop it in, and it makes a copy of that. And just for starters, you notice one interesting thing is even just the drag and drop scrambled up the option choices. So the answer that used to be A is now B, and so on and so forth. So it automatically does that. And like when I've made paper stuff in the past, sometimes I accidentally forgot to scramble up the option choices, which was kind of embarrassing. But you actually can't do that here because it's just automatically going to scramble it as soon as you pick one. So there's my question on the mean. And maybe I also want a question on the median, and I think that this one looks nice, so I'll just drag this over here. Pretty good. And I also want a question on the mode, and kind of looking at this. I usually prefer, in this class, I usually prefer word problems, but maybe to keep this short, I'll just pick this one. Great. So I've got 3 questions here, and obviously I could add more. There's a whole lot of options in TestGen for formatting the test. You could make it 2 columns if you wanted to. You could leave these answer blanks in, or you could take them out if you'd like to. You can grab one of these questions and reorder it to another place if you'd like. Now, one of the things that's interesting is obviously the ones that I've picked so far are all multiple choice questions. If you look to the left of these questions, there's a little box there with the letters BI in it. And that stands for bimodal, is that with these particular questions, there's 2 ways of presenting them, either multiple choice or short answer. So, and in the test bank itself, there are short answer questions, there's true-false questions, there's essay questions, all kinds of that stuff. Just at the second, we're looking at things that are bimodal in multiple choice view. So arguably, maybe that last question I didn't want to be multiple choice. I could just right-click on that, and I could pick change question type. Right, this bimodal question, which supports 2 things. I'll go down here and I'll say, hey, make that a short answer question instead. Okay, and now the multiple choice options disappear, right? And the student would have to do their own work and would have an open response here they'd have to fill in. So that might be kind of nice, or that particular question. I actually do like that being multiple choice. So I'll flip back to multiple choice. Pretty good. Other things that TestGen make kind of nice is I'm going to select all of these questions, and I'm going to go up here to the question menu, click on that, and you see there's an option here for scrambling, and it has 3 different options there. The first one would scramble up the order of those 3 questions, but leave the answer options A, B, C, D the same as they currently are. Or the second one would scramble up the A, B, C, D answer options while leaving the questions in the same place. But the last one will scramble up all the questions and all the options in just one single button press. So I will do that. Bam. And the order of the questions all get scrambled up, and the order of the options all got changed from what they were a second ago. And that single button press is obviously a heck of a lot easier than maybe cutting and pasting 20 things that I have and accidentally pasting one twice or something like that. So you're only one single button press away from scrambling the order up for everything. That would be really nice in our department. You're making an exit exam for multiple sections. You want to make maybe 4 different versions of the exam. You're just going to click that button 3 times and save the different version you get each time, and there you go. And you've got your 4 different versions of that exam in just like under a minute, I bet. That's kind of sweet. Other thing you can do, you notice if I click on one of these questions, those numbers are showing up in pink, right? Not that 7, but those numbers there are showing up in pink. And likewise for the numbers that are in the answer options. Those mean that they're changeable automatically by Blackboard itself. And if we change those, using the right facility, those numbers in the options are going to change to reflect the same relationship. So what I'll do right here is I'll select all 3 questions. I'll go back up to the question menu, and there's an option there for calculate new values. And as soon as I click that, all the numbers in all those questions are going to get revised. I'm just going to track that to be sure. Like in that first question, notice that the first couple numbers are 12, 22, 35. And now, a second later, right, they're 13, 21, 33. All those numbers changed. The numbers in the options, the numbers in all the other questions. And so if you are transitioning from one semester to another and you want to revise all your questions, you are only a single click away from revising all the numbers and not having the possibility of a mistake where you had to come up with the solutions and the distractors all afresh next time. That's taken care of automatically for you with basically no chance of error from there. If you dig under the hood, I believe what's happening, and it is hidden from us in these pre-made test banks, I believe what's happening is they have a limited set of possible options they could fill in, and I'm going to guess it might be around 10, maybe around 15 different options. If you sit here and you recalculate, you'll start to see the same things pop up over and over again. You can make your own questions actually, and you can fill in the couple of different options that you want to have randomizable. You can't use a formula. It's not an infinite number of options. If you're making it yourself, then the questions aren't actually linked to the options anymore, but they are done that way in the pre-made test bank, so that's very, very useful. Okay, so there's just my quick little preview pitch for TestGen, why some of us like it, and why you might want to consider using that. Even if you were giving in-person paper tests anyway, it's pretty sweet. But here's the meat of this video, is now that I have a test in TestGen that I'm happy with, how do I get that into Blackboard as a Blackboard recognized test? Starting now. So you got your test. I'm going to go over to File. And on this menu, there is Export. I'm clicking Export. Right? And now I'm going to pick what kind of thing I want to export it to. The prior version of TestGen didn't have this drop down here. It was just a bunch of radio buttons. But now you do this drop down and a bunch of different things here. It could be a PDF, could be HTML. But this option for Blackboard looks pretty promising to me. So this does support Blackboard from version 6 to 9. All right, so what's going to happen is when we get back to Blackboard, we will be importing this as a question pool. I did point that out briefly in my prior video that was going to be important here. So in order to identify this when it gets in there, I do want to give this some kind of title here. So I just call this Stat Test 1 perhaps. You could fill in more description, totally optional, doesn't make any difference, don't worry about that. Click OK. This is going to get saved as a zip file. So this zip file has a bunch of condensed information about the questions that you're saving here. So I'll just find some place on my local computer to save this zip file. I do have a temporary directory set up for this. Once we get done with this process, we can come back and delete the zip file because you will never use it again. But I'll just save this zip file as something that I'll recognize later on, like stat test 1. Okay, looks good. Very brief. So I'm about to switch away from TestGen here. Very brief comment here about the revision options that I just showed you a minute ago. Blackboard will automatically scramble up the order of the questions for different students if you want it to. It will also, the way this is exported actually, TestGen has actually got these questions we're looking at tagged with, I would like to scramble the options up differently for every single student when they take these tests. If you remember when I was making a test in Blackboard, I had to click a box separately for every single question to indicate that's what we wanted. But when you export from TestGen, you don't have to do that because they're all automatically set with, I'd like to scramble up the order of the options. So that's kind of convenient. The one thing that you can't do in Blackboard is you can't do this recalculate values business. That only exists in TestGen. Once you've got the questions in Blackboard, they're locked down like that unless you manually edit them. So, think about using that recalculate feature. If you wanted brand new values in your Blackboard test, you'd have to come back here, recalculate it, re-export it. So just kind of keep that in mind. Okay, so at this point, I have exported this test as this specialized zip file. I'm going to switch over to Blackboard at this point. So here's Blackboard. And we are now going to import this into the Testing Management Center. If you remember from the last video, that's down here under Course Management. I got to click on Course Tools. Open up that very, very large list of different course tools, and following alphabetical order, go down to Tests, Surveys, and Pools. So click on that. Remember, you get your three things here. And as we're saying, we're actually going to import this as a pool as your only option for this. So click on Pool. Currently, I don't have any here. You could build your own pool if you want to. I've actually never done that. The only thing I've ever done is import a pool specifically from TestGen. So I'll click on Import Pool. Right. Browse my computer. This standard attach a file type thing. So here I am in the temporary directory, and there's that zip file that I made a couple seconds ago, and I'll open that. Right. So it's about, I've selected that file. It's about to bring that into the system. I'll click Submit. If you have a really, really big, test, it might take a couple minutes for Blackboard to process it because it does have to take the information that's in the zip file and translate it into its own system. You see here the package has been processed. The operation import has completed. Everything looks good here. I'll click OK. Back in the list of pools, you can see that stat test 1, that was the name I gave it internally, is now in the system. It does have 3 questions here, so that looks pretty good. Now what I've got to do, now that I've got the actual questions in the system, and you could, if I wanted to, I could click here and click edit and go view those, but I think I know what's in them. So now what I got to do is I got to go actually build a test using those questions. So back up here, I'm going to click on Test Surveys and Pools. I'm going to click on Tests. Right. I have the one test that I made last time in the video demonstrating how to build a test in Blackboard itself. But what I'm going to do now is not build a new test. No, I am going to build a test. I'm sorry. See, one step too many even for me. So I'm going to click on Build a Test. Right, and here's the test information like last time. Give it a good name. This one I would give a full name because students are going to see this. And good description, good instructions is what I normally do. For the purpose of this video, I'm just going to skip that, but I've at least given this test a name. And now the thing that's different is that instead of creating questions manually like I did last time, now I will click on this Reuse Question menu. And the thing that I want to do down here is I want to click on Find Questions. So I'll do this. Right. Now, what happens when you do that is it does bring up a separate window that we use to pick the questions that you want in this test. My browser is being careful about trying to keep me secure right now, and it actually did block that pop-up. So maybe this happens for you. I'll hit OK. On Firefox up here, top right, I'll click Options, and I'll say, please show stuff that's coming from bb-hosted.cuny.edu web apps, etc., etc. So once I do this, right, now that comes up, and now I'm finding questions that exist in my pools. You notice over here under pools, if I had more than one pool, I could check off all the ones that I want to look at. So the only thing I need right now is this stat test 1. Great. Brings in those questions. Right, there's the 3 questions there. And if you wanted to, hypothetically, you could pick one at a time which ones you want. I know that I want all 3 of these. So as usual, I'll just pick the one box way at the top, and they all get selected. Right, I want all of those there. The way that TestGen is doing this, these are all coming in as 1-point questions. If you make it in Blackboard, it defaults to 10 points. I actually kind of prefer this defaulting to 1 point, particularly if it's multiple choice. So I kind of like that. I've got my 3 questions selected. I'll click Submit. And basically that's it actually, right? So now I have this test and the 3 questions have come in and I can kind of scan it to make sure. That's pretty much what I wanted. If you wanted different point values here, you'd click here, right? And you'd fill in 10 or 5 or whatever you like. I'll just cancel that. But that's it. So there's my test in Blackboard actually. Normally I'd fill in nice description instructions there, but so be it. Done. I'll hit OK. There you go. So I have now a second test in my list of tests. And again, that was started in TestGen, exported it to the Blackboard format, which is a zip file, which gets stored normally. And then in Blackboard, come into the pools, import that pool, then go to the test, then build a test, then reuse questions, find questions from that pool and just suck them all in is all I had to do. So that was, I think, quite a bit less work than actually manufacturing the test in Blackboard. And the main advantage was using that pre-made Pearson TestGen test bank to get started with instead of writing out the whole thing to begin with myself. Now you notice that I still haven't deployed any of these tests. They haven't been assigned to students, they haven't been scheduled, and they certainly haven't been graded. So that'll be the next video that I'm working on, but I hope that you at least consider using this mechanism that I've used for, I guess, about 8 years at this point, of using TestGen to get started, importing into Blackboard, and then just skipping the whole, click on a million things that you have to do in Blackboard for a test. And again, if I went over something too fast here, feel free to send me an email on the Kingsborough system, and I'll look forward to talking to you next time we're in person.